All right, what's going on, everybody? So I'm at the movies right now. I'm about to go see Gretel and Hansel. This is going to be a different kind of video where I actually kind of like vlog me actually seeing something. This is going to be the first time I've ever gone to the movies by myself. So let's see how it goes, and I'll be back afterwards with my recap.
How the island does what it does is a mystery. It brought her back to life.
Alright guys, I'm back. So just got out of the movie just ended, and let me just start off by saying, wow, this is not like anything I've ever seen before. I can confidently and honestly say this is probably the best movie in these last 2 years that I've seen as far as new films go. Maybe Midsommar is a little bit better than this, but maybe I put it a little bit higher. But overall, I'm blown away by this, to be honest. So if you don't know, the original like nursery rhyme or like folk tale is Hansel and Gretel, and it follows two little kids who wander the woods, I guess you could say. They stumble upon a house. They're starving, very hungry, and they smell all of this food coming from the house. They make their way inside, and they encounter a witch who lives there. And as time goes on, as the story unfolds, they start to realize that she is a witch, and she ends up eating the children. She ends up cooking them and eating them. So this movie is titled, obviously, Gretel and Hansel, and what I was expecting going into it is probably more of a modern take on the story, and maybe a different ending. Just overall, maybe a different point to the story. But I'd say overall it was pretty consistent with the original like nursery rhyme folktale. So for starters, this movie is directed by Oz Perkins, and it stars Sophia Lillis, who, if you've ever seen either of the new It movies, It Chapter 1 or Chapter 2, not the original like miniseries, she plays Beverly in those films. She's been in a number of other things. Very familiar face. And also Elise Krige, forgive me if I pronounce that wrong, Krige. She plays Hulda, who's basically the witch. This film is, like I said, as far as the storyline goes, it's pretty similar. I don't think in the original like folktale, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember their mother like going insane. I don't know if that was in it or not. I'm not sure, but in the film, in the movie, their mom basically loses her mind after the death of their father. Well, actually, their father died early in their childhood. She's losing her mind. She can't seem to bear living in the house anymore or taking care of the children. So she does what any normal, typical... There's people walking by my car right now. Sorry, that just distracted me. She does what any normal, typical, sane, level-headed mom would do. She just puts her kids out in the middle of the forest and tells them that if they come back, she's gonna chop them up into pieces. I mean, that's what most moms would do. I would think that's like obvious, duh. Like, of course, that's what you're gonna tell your kids. Like, what are you gonna tell them? That you'll take care of them? But no, in all seriousness, so yeah, they're basically on their own in the woods. You have Gretel, who is, it never specifies, but she's probably 16, 17 years old, maybe 15, and then she has to look after her younger brother Hansel, who is probably 8, 9 years old. She basically becomes his mother, since obviously she's older and she can actually fend for herself, unlike him. They're in the woods for a couple of days. They're looking for different places to stay. They stumble upon this guy who helps them out a lot, gives them a meal, lets them bathe, and puts them on a direction to finding help or just kind of getting out of the situation they're in. That only lasts one night, and then they go back into the woods, and it's been a full day or so since they've eaten, and desperate times call for desperate measures. Desperate times call for desperate measures. So they decide to eat mushrooms because that's pretty much the only thing they can find. They eat the mushrooms, and I mentioned Midsommar earlier in this video. If you've ever seen it, you know what I'm about to say. They start to trip and stumble, and they have a real bad trip off of these mushrooms. Imagine being like 8 or 9 years old and like eating hallucinogen, like eating like mushrooms that take you on a trip. Like, so as they come down off of their trip, they still are unsure if they're seeing things or if these are not or if these are not hallucinations, if these things are actually happening. They see a house and they get, they're cautious about it. They get up to it. Hansel is just so desperate to eat that all he can think about is how it smells of cake. It smells of cake. And you could just tell, like, Gretel is like, all Hansel can think about is how it smells of cake. That's why he wants to go into this house that looks as if it definitely belongs to a witch. But he's also a little kid, so, what can you really say? Anyway, they go up to the house, they knock and bang on the windows for a while. They think no one's home. They look in the window and see a whole table full of food. Just a feast that looks like it was prepared for, like, the Last Supper or something. Like, I mean, there's so much food. They're desperate, so they break in the house. Gretel is actually on the outside. She sees Hansel get taken by the witch, Hulda. And she goes in looking after her brother. They end up meeting Hulda, and she starts to tell them, different things, and basically makes it seem as if she will look after the kids. She'll take care of them. At this point, they're so desperate, they're not going to turn it down no matter how creepy she is. They have a place to stay, food, they can bathe, they have a bed to sleep in at night, so they're with it at this point. Things begin to turn down a dark path. One thing after another happens. Eventually, the kids start being put into situations that they're not too comfortable with, and Hulda is kind of mentioning to Gretel little bits and little pieces of information, or kind of just weird like advice that she's giving her, saying that your brother is going to hold you back in the long run, or your brother is going to end up hating you. And it just seems as if she's trying to like break the two apart. So one day she realizes that Hansel is nowhere to be found, and after she looks for him for a while, she travels down under the house into the basement. And one of probably my favorite scene from a movie, specifically a horror movie, well, I guess any movie in general, that I've seen in some time, is when she first goes into the basement and finds him. She finds Hansel just staring at a wall, and she's trying to get him, and like trying to get him out of the state and trying to wake him up basically from whatever is like possessed him. And she's unsuccessful. There's some kind of pipe or fountain that's just spilling what looks like blood onto the floor, and after a minute or so it becomes more clear and something's forming out of this like liquid. It ends up being a person who is a witch, who ends up being Hulda, the witch that is whose house they're in. And it's actually her at her younger / realistic state, and she gets this whole bucket of like limbs and like organs from little kids, and she's pouring it onto the table, and it's just an amazing scene. So it's just beautiful. The only other spoiler that I could really give for this movie is the fact that at the very end, which I think the end is amazing, it is revealed that Hulda became a witch and became evil because she had a daughter who she felt held her back in life and ruined everything she had, took people from her. So she ended up killing her own daughter and her other child, and she ate both of them. She became evil and got these kind of like magical powers from this. So just like I, just mentioned about the scene that I love so much when they first go into the basement, she's actually like a 30 to 40-year-old woman, but she took the form of an older woman to give her more of a innocent look, so people wouldn't think she's so evil. So very strange. The camera work in this movie is, I could go on about this for hours, but it's as close to perfect as you can get, in my opinion. Not only the fact that you have shots that are taken from the ground up. There's a lot of shots in this movie that are from lower perspective, looking up, kind of like, what people might call worm's eye, like worm's eye point of view, whatever. There are some shots where it's like behind the back following someone, and it's like more of a found footage, like shaky camera kind of thing. There is certain shots that are filmed with what looks like maybe like Super 8 film, like it was like, vintage kind of. It's just so, Oz Perkins is just so creative. And yeah, just in all, I just love everything visual about this movie. The storyline is great. I like the fact that they kept it pretty much the same. Like, to me, they kept this pretty much the same as like the folktale and just expanded on it, just added some stuff in, which I thought was good. They didn't need to, fully change it. They kept it modern, which was cool. And the acting was amazing. Sophia Lillis, Elise Kriege, they both were great. So there's really not much about this movie that I can say that I didn't like. This is easily the best movie I've seen so far this year. And like I said, easily top 3 out of last year. So I can tell this is one that I definitely am going to rewatch at some point. So if you guys were unsure, if you were on the fence about this movie, I highly recommend it. It's very unique, very different. It's not a typical horror film. And I think I don't think taking a folktale, a story that everyone knows, and making it into a movie is easy at all. Especially something like this, a topic that's so different in horror films. You don't see a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's not a lot of horror films, in my opinion, that are period pieces that are actually scary. This was obviously set in, I don't know when the story was written, probably like over 100 years ago. But this was probably like the 1800s maybe. They were speaking like Old English and stuff. For what it's worth, for the task at hand, for the difficulty of this film, and for the execution, I think it checks every box. And there's really not much at all that I can say negatively about this film. It was definitely worth it, definitely worth going to see. And if you have not seen it, I highly suggest you do. I'm going to give Gretel and Hansel my first 5 out of 5 on this channel. My first perfect score. Like I said, checks every box. Anything you can think of, I think this movie did well and executed on. So, once again, thank you guys for watching. Sorry that I haven't posted a video in like 2 weeks. I'm trying to be more consistent. And I know I have next to no subscribers so far, but just give me some feedback and let me know if you guys like this kind of more vlog-ish kind of video. So, see you guys next time.